A lot can happen in those first few moments when we enter a place of worship. First impressions are made from the signs found and not found in the places of entry for religious faith communities. There is something about these portals of entry that can be extraordinarily powerful, showering mercies upon the world. They carry a great deal of potential to be quite influential and life-changing. After all, those who enter through these openings usually arrive already in a state of openness and willingness to venture over the threshold to begin with. We have precious opportunities as a people of faith to help facilitate openings, expansiveness, inclusiveness, and welcoming for not only those of us who enter for the first time, but also for each and every one of us who enter again and again and again. I have three stories to share with you here today. These three stories all take place in one form or another, in a space that symbolizes an opening. Well, to be more exact, literally, the front foyer, the vestibule, those places in which we enter before we step into our sanctuaries, all happen within a religious context of worship. Here's my first story. I stood for the first time in the front foyer of the Humboldt Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Northern California. I was looking for a sign that I would fit in. I was Muslim. I looked hard for the signs to see if my female partner and I would fit in. I was a liberal faith person, and I was searching for community. It was the early spring of 2001. Michelle and I had just moved from Austin, Texas to Northern California. Michelle had received a job working at the local hospital. And I had been used to being self-employed, and I was looking to put to use my bachelor's in business and my master's in urban and regional planning, and I think at the time I was looking into actually investing in some rental property. We were excited to begin anew in a land that held so much possibility, so much hope for us, so a place where we felt we could start a family and be warmly accepted. I had left a liberal progressive Muslim community, and no such progressive-leaning Muslim community existed where we had moved to. It was a lot to give up, but we did so with a great deal of hope, as I had said, and we were hopeful that we would find a life and a community that we could be our whole selves. So as I stood there, I was so relieved to find that I need not step any further, not even into the sanctuary, because I found the signs I was seeking. My eyes, they instantly landed on the wall where I saw this poster. We have one here. It's the welcoming and affirming poster. And I read it, and I remember distinctly taking a deep breath of gratitude. I was quite relieved to find that I need not cover, and that I not only need not cover as a Muslim, but that Michelle and I need not cover. And right about that time, I distinctly remember Michelle slipping her hand into mine and giving it a squeeze after she had finished reading it too. Actually, the Muslim piece I didn't really figure out until the next part when I picked up a brochure. And when I read it, And I read through the Unitarian Universalist 7 principles, recognizing that each principle was in complete accordance with my theological perspectives, my beliefs, my values. I remember my hope was cracked wide open as I went on to read that this living, liberal, religious tradition that we share draws upon all of the world's religions. The hands that shook ours, the smiles we received, and the congregants who greeted us proved to become the warm, welcoming, and loving community who held not only Michelle and I in fellowship, but proved to be the village that received each and every one of our children into their midst as their own gift and responsibility to care for, to love, and to guide. I am proudly a Unitarian Universalist, and I can say that entry foyer, that opening, made all the difference. Maybe you remember stepping into the entry area here for the first time, seeking and hopeful that you would find a community, that you could be your whole self, a place where you would not have to cover any aspect of your self-identity to belong, a place where the inclusivity of the hyphen that links your precious complexities of all who you are is received with openness. Seven years later, the second story. Our 6-year-old daughter, Amina Noor, and you know her as Abigail. Her Muslim name is Amina Noor. Amina Noor and I stood with a group of my fellow Unitarian Universalist seminarians in the front foyer, you guessed it, the front foyer of this time, a religious synagogue in Istanbul, Turkey. And as we listened to the rabbi share this story that I'd like to share with you, he began by looking tenderly down at Amina Noor's eyes. Amina Noor, she held this recorder up in the air like this, as high as she could, close to his mouth. Nowhere close to his mouth, but as high as she could get up there. She wanted to record every bit of his story. Do you see that old grandfather clock? And we each turned our heads and we followed where his hand was gesturing. There stood this quite impressive, large grandfather clock, a majestic piece. It was handcrafted, beautiful, designed wood carvings in it. But the wood cabinet was damaged, and the glass over its frozen hands of time was cracked. And the rabbi asked us, "What time does that clock read?" And one of us said, 17 minutes after 9. It didn't escape us that it was stuck on 17 minutes after 9. And the rabbi, he explained, that is the exact time in which a terrorist bomb exploded right here where we stand. He looked at Amina Noor again, and he softened his voice. And then he charged her and each and every one of us to remember this story, the way in which this tragedy really unfolded, and to go back to the United States and to share it with everyone that we could.